There might be a bit of a disagreement within the coalition over the party's nuclear energy plan. The Liberals and Nationals appear to be at odds over the location of their proposed nuclear site. So, joining me live now is the Nationals leader, David Littleproud. David, thanks so much for your time. Is there disagreement?
No, there's not, and there's a process that we're working through. An article that names people that aren't prepared to put their name to the story is nothing more than gossip. The reality is it's a structured process. We've been very clear, Peter Dutton and myself, about where our proposed nuclear power plants will go. They'll go where existing coal-fired power stations are. There's over 17 locations at the moment that have existing coal-fired power stations, but we actually have to run through what will be the best mix in making sure that we cut down the need for 28,000 kilometres of new transmission lines under Labor's all renewables approach. So there's a process that we'll work through, and we've been very clear about making sure that those communities that are most appropriate, that we'll work through in rewarding them, not just in terms of infrastructure, but discounting power that would look to increase the industrial capability of those communities and those regions. That's common sense, and that's what we'll be honest with the Australian people about, and that's what the pathway that Peter Dutton and I are on.
Just because they're anonymous quotes doesn't mean it's gossip. Would you accept that if you're getting these kinds of, people, MPs speaking on condition of anonymity, there's a bit of tension within your plan, within your party?
No, there's not. There's no tension at all. There may be a few that want to try to make hay for their own personal gain, but our party room,
that's tension,
is the first party room to support. No, there's no tension. But tension is when you don't have a majority, and there is a clear majority of our party room that wants nuclear power. We're the ones that actually started this conversation. The first thing I did when I became Nationals leader was write to the Prime Minister and say that the Nationals believe in a mixed grid, not putting all our energy eggs in one basket, to take away that concentration risk and to give us firming power so that we have sovereign capability of manufacturing in this country. The Nationals are one that started that. And we will finish it. And I'm proud to say that Peter Dutton is the first Liberal leader to have the courage of his conviction to come on that pathway as well. And so we'll be very honest with not only the communities but the Australian people about making sure that they can have surety in reliable, affordable power that will give them baseload power that will mean we can manufacture things in this country. Because the one reason why we can't manufacture in this country is because power is too expensive and unreliable. If you go down an all renewables approach, it actually makes it even less reliable. Batteries can't support, Tomago or a smelter in Gladstone. And so we have to be honest about what our opportunities are, but we've got sovereignty of our resources and we'll have a common sense energy approach. There is no confusion, there is no angst. We are working through a structured process, Peter Dutton and I, and we'll make sure that we're honest with the Australian people every step of the way.
Do you think it's going to be an easy sell?
Oh, look, obviously this is a huge policy shift, but I think what you're seeing in polls, not only today but in the past, is that people are prepared to open their mind to the new technology that's there. We're not talking about 1950s technology. We're talking about technology that's being used safely around the world for decades. And what they want. And I think even in the Australian poll, where they're trying to say that the Australian people have given a tick to Albanese's plan about manufacturing solar panels, giving subsidies for that, the question goes to the heart of, do they want manufacturing in this country? Well, we all do, but how it's sustainable isn't through giving subsidies that the Australian taxpayer can only afford for a certain amount of time. It's actually setting the fundamentals to underpin that, which is reliable, cheap energy that's zero emissions, which nuclear energy can provide manufacturing sector. So there'll be a clear difference between ourselves and Labor, and the polls are showing that Australian people are more and more open to understanding that there is a technological solution and we should back ourselves as a country, change this culture of this country of saying why can't we do things to how do we, and that's the can-do nature that Peter Dutton and I'll bring to the Australian electorate at the next election.
Would you agree that most people are worried about cost at the moment? We're in a cost of living crisis that, even when you're out of a crisis, it rarely changes. The cost is the number one issue, reliability, of course, one of them as well. When would your plan, bring costs down?
Well, and that's what we'll be very clear about. What you've got to understand is that we'll make sure that there's an honest conversation about what the energy mix is, that renewables are not the cheapest, because a nuclear power plant will last for 60 years. Wind towers at best would last 15 to 20. So you'll have 3 replacements of those over that period of time. And that's before you even have to put in the 28,000 kilometres of transmission lines. This government's going to spend over $1.2 trillion of your taxpayers' dollar to transition to an all renewables approach, giving us concentration risk, putting all our energy eggs in one basket. What we will say is there'll be an upfront investment that will give long-term reductions in energy prices, but will underpin our sovereign capability to manufacture in this country, bring it back to the shores. We've already seen so much manufacturing loss in this country. And so that's what you'll see from us. We're not going to be bullied into putting this at any timeline, but you will see it before the election. And we'll be honest with the Australian people about what that energy mix will look like.
Bullied into putting a timeline on it?
Isn't that
exactly what we need?
Announcing it within the next couple of weeks.
Oh,
no,
okay.
No,
so
announcing
you're
it
talking
within
about
the next
the plan.
couple of weeks. So
you're
we'll
talking
announce
about the blueprint.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. We'll have that for the Australian people to. No, and look, this is a complex piece, as you've just articulated, rightfully articulated. This is a big shift in policy, one that we need to bring the Australian people with us on. And we need to be able to demonstrate about making sure that an all renewables approach is going to be detrimental to this country, makes us more vulnerable. But we have the sovereignty of our resources to have an energy mix of transitioning coal into nuclear with gas. We're going to need gas is going to be the energy that transitions and helps not only nuclear works but help renewables work. And there will be a renewables mix, and we want to make sure that there's a place for renewables. At the moment, they've lost their social licence. When you look at things like Port Stephens, where I was last week, offshore, 20 kilometres off the shore, where whale habitat, where whale lines go through for their migration. It's just insanity when there are other alternatives, and we just need to pause to plan to get this right. We'll live up to our international commitments. We're not running away from them, but we'll do this in a uniquely Australian way, where Australians will not pay a bigger price and regional Australia will not bear all the burden.
So even wind turbines 20 kilometres offshore are a problem now. I mean, I know that you're expressing community sentiment there, but it just tells me, David, if you've got pushback with things like that, 20 kilometres offshore, you're going to have pushback on nuclear sites, even if it is on these old coal sites, aren't you? Are you prepared for that?
Yes, we are, because you're actually asking for less pushback and less impact on the community, because you take away the 28,000 kilometres of transmission lines because you're plugging it into where existing power stations are. The footprint of a nuclear power plant is a matter of hectares, not hundreds of thousands of hectares in individual regions to actually put wind turbines and solar panels up that are destroying the very thing that they're there to protect, the actual natural environment. But they're also tearing away our food security, not only on land, but offshore. I mean, there are fishermen off Port Stephens, a fisherman who employs over 200 people that fear his fishing grounds lost. He'll lose 200 jobs and our food security goes down. There's an Australian way to do this with this thing called common sense, and that's what the Nationals will continue to prosecute with Peter Dutton. And I think we will have a policy that the Australian people can have confidence in, that will give us reliable, affordable power, but that'll live up to our international commitments that we've made by 2050.
It strikes me, David, if I could put this to you, that both sides, I know there's a bit of product differentiation here, and that's certainly going to be helpful going into the next election, but it strikes me that both sides of politics here are relying on technology advancing quite quickly within the next decade. If batteries came in leaps and bounds and could actually store a lot of this renewable energy, would you change tack if it was cheaper to do it that way and more reliable?
Yeah, well, let me just say the technology is there for nuclear already, and that's what we'll be using, is already a technology that exists, particularly in the medium-sized technology. So it is there, it's being used around the world, and that's what we'll base it off. But it's also about making sure that we have an energy mix, because what you're doing by saying we're going down batteries and all renewables is you're having concentration risk. And that opens up Australia to significant vulnerability.
Be a game changer, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, they can't do it.
They can't yet. But what I'm saying, if this technology came advanced well beyond expectations, would you change tack? Because would that be the better option if
No,
batteries
because
were able to...
it comes back to the point that I made initially, is that it's not about having concentration risk. It's spreading our risk of having coal transitioning into nuclear with gas firming, with carbon capture storage to reduce to zero emissions, and then a mix of renewables. And that's what we're saying is we can have a mix because we have sovereignty of all our resources in this country.
Yeah.
And that's the sensible way, instead of putting all your energy eggs in one basket. Now, batteries may get to some point, but that mix of what we have in renewables can be supported by the technology in batteries. But in a country like this, why would we put all our energy eggs in one basket and have concentration risk? And particularly 28,000 kilometres of transmission lines that we saw earlier this year, when they come down, they open up our vulnerability to grids going down from storms. So we've got a sensible pathway through this. We've got to be calm and methodical. That's what the coalition will put forward. We will live up to our international commitment, but we will do it in a uniquely Australian way in our setting to make sure that we don't have a detrimental impact on our economy and regional Australia.